It was a crisp Monday afternoon at JFK Airport, and the entire terminal buzzed with the familiar rhythm of travelers coming and going. Suitcases rolled across the polished floors. Families clung to each other for emotional goodbyes, and business professionals hurriedly strode past, their eyes glued to their phones, eager to catch their flights. Among them was David Carter, a man of quiet confidence. His presence was unassuming yet striking, dressed in a sleek blazer, dark jeans, and well-worn leather loafers. He carried himself with the air of someone who had worked hard for his success, but never felt the need to flaunt it. David was more than just an accomplished entrepreneur. He was a devoted husband and father. After an exhausting week of back-to-back negotiations and high-pressure meetings in New York, he was eager to return home to Atlanta, where his family awaited him. He could already imagine the warm embrace of his wife, the excited laughter of his children as they tackled him at the door. That thought alone was enough to make the stress of the past few days melt away. Where are you watching this from today? Let us know in the comments below. Frequent air travel was second nature to David. As the CEO of a thriving tech company, he practically spent more time soaring through the skies than he did on solid ground. His unwavering loyalty to a particular airline had earned him an elite status, one that came with the perks of first-class travel. And for this long journey back home, he had treated himself to a luxurious first-class seat, a well-earned reward after a relentless work schedule. As he approached the boarding gate, he flashed a polite smile at the gate agent while handing over his boarding pass. The agent, accustomed to processing a never-ending stream of passengers, barely glanced up before scanning it and offering a courteous nod. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Carter." "Thank you," David replied, appreciating the seamless process. With that, he stepped onto the jet bridge, ready to settle in for a comfortable flight home. Inside the cabin, a sense of calmness lingered in the first-class section. The plush leather seats gleamed under the soft lighting, and only a handful of passengers had taken their spots. David located his seat 3A, a spacious window seat perfect for unwinding. He carefully placed his carry-on in the overhead compartment before easing into his seat, exhaling deeply. The feel of the cool leather against his back was a welcome relief. Just as he adjusted the air vent above him, a flight attendant entered the cabin. Her uniform was crisp, her hair pulled into a tight, no-nonsense bun. There was an air of authority in the way she carried herself, her sharp eyes scanning the passengers with an almost scrutinizing gaze. Her name tag read Susan. As she moved down the aisle, her eyes locked onto David. There was a pause. A flicker of something unreadable passed across her face. Her gaze lingered just a second too long before she took a step closer. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her tone clipped and professional, yet laced with something colder. "Are you sure you're in the correct seat?" David looked up, momentarily caught off guard. He gave her a polite nod before holding up his boarding pass. "Yes, this is my seat, 3A. Susan didn't immediately acknowledge his response. Instead, she leaned in, her expression tightening as she plucked the boarding pass from his fingers. She examined it closely, her lips pursing, as if expecting to find an error, a reason to prove him wrong. She muttered, a skeptical edge in her voice. "This is a first-class seat. Are you certain you booked it?" David's posture remained composed, but tension coiled in his chest. "Yes, I'm absolutely certain," he replied evenly, though he could feel the weight of eyes turning toward them. Susan handed the boarding pass back, but made no move to leave. Instead, she crossed her arms, her stance stiff with doubt. "There might have been a mix-up," she said, raising her voice just enough for others to hear. "This section is reserved for first-class passengers, and, well, I'm just not sure the seat is appropriate for you." There it was. The unspoken message behind her words hit him like a slap. The insinuation was clear, and from the way a few heads turned in their seats, others had picked up on it too. David inhaled deeply, keeping his emotions in check. "There's no mistake," he said firmly. "I booked this seat weeks ago. I fly with this airline regularly." Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside while we sort this out. David's jaw tightened. I'm not stepping aside. I'm in my assigned seat, and I plan to stay here. His voice remained steady, but beneath it, irritation simmered. By now, whispers filled the cabin. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others had already pulled out their phones, recording the escalating confrontation. Susan exhaled sharply, clearly agitated. With a dramatic sigh, she spun on her heel. Fine, she huffed. I'll get my supervisor. As she marched toward the front of the plane, David sat back in his seat, his hands gripping the armrest. He was used to being underestimated, but that didn't make moments like this any less infuriating. Minute later, a middle-aged man in a Navy uniform approached. His name tag read Tom, the cabin manager. His expression was calm yet professional as he stopped beside David's seat. Good evening, sir. I understand there's been a concern regarding your seat. David handed over his boarding pass once more. There's no issue on my end, he said. I booked this seat, but your flight attendant seems to think otherwise. Tom scanned the ticket, then looked back at Susan, who stood behind him, arms still crossed. This ticket is perfectly valid, he confirmed. Mr. Carter is exactly where he's supposed to be. Susan's shoulders stiffened. I just thought. Tom cut her off, his expression hardening. Mistake or not, the way you handled the situation is entirely unacceptable. His tone carried a firm reprimand. We do not treat our passengers this way, especially when they've done absolutely nothing wrong. A flush crept up Susan's neck as her lips parted, as if scrambling for a defense. But before she could say another word, Tom's voice lowered into a tone that left no room for argument. Step into the galley with me. Now. David watched as Susan reluctantly followed, her posture tense. Their hushed conversation was inaudible, but from the flicker of emotion on her face, it was clear the discussion wasn't going in her favor. Moments later, she reappeared in the aisle, but this time, she wasn't wearing her uniform blazer. Instead, she clutched her belongings and walked briskly toward the exit. The cabin murmured in quiet astonishment. A woman seated across from David leaned over and whispered, "Good for you. People need to be held accountable." David managed a faint smile. "Thank you." As the plane took off, he tried to shake off the incident, losing himself in the pages of his book. But as the hours passed, his mind kept returning to it. This wasn't just about a seat. It wasn't just about a moment of humiliation. It was about challenging deeply ingrained biases, about refusing to stay silent when injustice reared its head. By the time the plane touched down in Atlanta, the story had already made its way across social media. The incident had gone viral, igniting discussions on prejudice, accountability, and the necessity of treating people with respect. For David, it was a bittersweet moment, a reminder of the challenges that still existed, but also a testament to the power of speaking up. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Together, we can share valuable lessons that remind us all of the importance of humility, respect, and human connection. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.